Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 178 overall and session number 54 of the Council of Elrond, which is starting, I don't know, every week it's starting to feel like a more and more disproportional percentage of the entire number of sessions. I have to admit, not that it's an unexpectedly large number of sessions in itself, but anyway, it just kind of brings more and more painfully to my attention how absolutely inexcusably fast we went at the very beginning of this discussion. But anyway, all right. I'm ready to jump back into the text tonight. Tonight, I'm looking forward to discussing their reasoning. Last time we were spending a good deal of time looking at specifically the issue, like the assertion that Elrond makes about the Valar and what their perspective may or may not be. And that I found a very useful discussion, and I'm really glad for that. And we're coming up on another thing that I'm going to need help with. If it seems like I'm needing a lot of help lately, there's a reason for that. This section that we are in right now, like these paragraphs in the midst of which we are some of the ones that I have always kind of struggled with a little bit. So I'm looking forward to continuing and looking through their reasoning there. Okay. So, but quick, first, I have an announcement, and it's a really fun announcement. I mean, not that all of my announcements aren't fun, because I don't doubt that they are. But this involves a special opportunity with capital letters. What this announcement is, it's about our Signum Path program. Now, just a quick reminder for those of you who don't remember about that. Signum Path is one of our newest programs at Signum. It's a professional development program designed to teach communication skills, people skills, the kind of soft skills that really help you kind of get ahead in whatever industry you work in, whatever kind of career you have. Skills which a lot of people we know really need help with. So we have had an anonymous donation made to Signum by someone who really would like to help folks be able to take path courses. So she has made a donation which is funding 6 free path courses for folks who would be interested in that. So here's how this is going to work. If you are interested, perhaps, in taking a free path course. In particular, we wanted to start people off on one of our 2 kind of like our original sort of path badges. That is our oral communications badge and our written communications badge. So we want to do, for this coming month, for the month of April, we want to give away seats for either our Nuts and Bolts writing course or our Powerful Presentations writing course. So those are 2 of our 2 really good starting places for people who would like to work on the written communications and on their oral presentation of things. So we're going to give away seats in either one of those 2 in April. So if you are able to do that, and if you are interested in this, here's all you have to do. Send an email to path@signumu.org. So just send an email to path@signumu.org. And at the end of the week, so like, what I call Sunday night, what most of you would call early morning on Monday, we'll do a random selection and pick randomly 6 of the people who have emailed us between now and then. This enables folks who are not here live to be able to kind of get in on this possibility too. So as I said, I've got 6 seats. So send an email to path@signumu.org. Let us know that you are interested in this, and let us know which of the 2 courses, Powerful Presentations or Nuts and Bolts, our Writing Nuts and Bolts course, which of those 2 you would be most interested in taking, and we will I'll roll the dice and we'll let you know. So anyway, that is that is that's my announcement for this week. So many thanks to the generous donor, generous in more than one sense, generous, to Signum, of course, and making the donation in the first place, but also very thoughtful towards others. Knowing, this donor has heard me talk about, some of the things that our current Path students have been telling us about, our current and very recent Path students have been telling us about the ways that they've been benefited by this program. So, she really just wanted to make this available for more people. So many thanks there. All right. So path@signumu.org if you would like to be in on that drawing. So that is the announcement here for this evening. Now, let us head back into the text here. So I was mostly done, I think, with this slide, but I've kind of kept it up because I was not 100% sure. In the sea, it would be safe. As I recall, we didn't finish considering the business about casting it in the deeps and making the lies of Saruman come true. I have a vague memory of leaving something. Was there a question I left us with last time? I'm completely blanking about the end of the last session. But because I remember saying that Glorfindel's assertion that often lies truth is hidden, that the very nature of Saruman's deception makes it possible that that's actually a good idea, was something that I found actually kind of compelling, in fact. So I remember some of you were asking about we did talk about the question of would any of the Valar be corrupted by it. I wasn't worried about Ulmo, though I do think that Aulë could be a danger to himself and others if the Ring of Power came near him. I'm not sure of the relative power of Sauron and Aulë at this point, but that's got to be okay. Aulë, yeah, Aslan's Compass. I've been wondering for 3 weeks about Aulë and the ring. Yeah, it wouldn't be Ase's first transgression. It would not, certainly. Yeah, Trifle, I agree. He's a danger to himself and others without the ring. Well, I mean, once, right? I mean, everyone has had some kind of wild transgression in one's younger days, hasn't one? So, Aulë, he's learned his lesson. But it's interesting, actually, just a little footnote on Aulë there. The way in which Aulë is attached to violence, but I mean, Tolkis is attached to violence, but it's different, right? There's a different relationship between violence and Aulë, of wildness, of chaos, right? Of like a delight in like destruction itself that Aulë seems to have is a really interesting kind of tang, right, in the whole nature of Ase's character, and unusual in the Valar, or at least unusual in the Valar as they were later composed. That element in the Valar originally in the Book of Lost Tales was much more pronounced. What were their names? Mease and what was the dude? Makor? Makar. Yeah, there we go. Makar and Mease. Yeah, exactly. Makar and Mease were the two Valar who in the Book of Lost Tales were pretty sketchy. Like they were all about like violence and death in the arena and chaos. They were mixing it up. So he ditched them in I think his first major revision. They dropped out fairly early on, but that there was an element of that because it's a thing, right? I mean, it's an element of the world. This a kind of mercilessness and delight in slaughter, and enjoying chaos, and it's a thing. Anyway, so Aulë is the only one in whom that kind of like element of wildness and chaos, real wildness, not just kind of, rugged and untamed, but real delight in just like destruction of stuff really lives. Yeah, and Tessie, you're absolutely right that there's no real reason to think the Maiar would all be good. There's so many of them. People have different opinions and personalities. Yeah, no, absolutely. And Tony, I agree. Makar and Mayase are essentially occupying the position of a war god, which we do see in many pantheons, and which we don't really have the closest we get to like a god of war in the later pantheon is what's his face? Eonwe. I was about to call him Fionwe, which was his original name. Eonwe, the guy who used to be the son of Manwe. He's the closest in some ways. I think that as far as like a martial military one. And Tulkas, Fourth Dauntless, absolutely is kind of like war god-ish, but he's a very sort of peculiar flavor of a god of war. Anyway, okay, let's see. Hang on a second. Fourth Dauntless, I almost missed your provocative idea here. I'm going to propose a provocative idea. I think Yavanna, as she's opposed to the depredations of those who go on two legs, might not be entirely safe from temptation. Well, Fourth Dauntless, you're certainly right. When we were talking with the Valar about are they susceptible? Are they susceptible? Fourth Dauntless, going back to the Tom Bombadil discussion, right? Does Yavanna have what Tom Bombadil has? The kind of like perfect contentment that leaves him no desire to be filled, nothing upon which the temptation of the ring can fasten. No, I don't think she has that. I don't think she has that at all. We do get the sense, as you point out, that Yavanna is not discontent, but she grieves. She's troubled, right? She's troubled. She's does not. I would think at the very least, Yavanna experiences fairly strongly the temptation to disapprove, resist the direction in which history is moving. If you see what I mean by that, it's that we can see that, we can feel that pretty strongly, I think, in the of Aulë and Yavanna chapter. Her anxiety about her creatures, right? About, her own children, the plants and the animals, and what's going to happen to them when the children of Iluvatar arise. And of course, things are going to get worse and worse. Yeah. So anyway, I agree. I think that's interesting. I think that's true. But see, again, I'm not worried about any of the primary Valar. I just don't think the ring is going to offer them that much. I really don't. The ring, we know, can, in some sense, we're told that it gives people power according to their stature, right? But I don't think that's true. There's a law of the, conservation of power here, right? It cannot give Valar power according to their stature. I just don't think it's got that to give. I think that that is beyond it. I really think. Right. Arna says the ring doesn't have to be able to deliver on its promises, though. Right. Well, so it could, deceive her. Sure, but again, I cannot imagine that the Ring of Power would not just look quite different from the perspective of the Valar. You know, I really don't. I really don't. And yeah, I agree. Turambar says, I would argue that Yavanna could just wipe Middle-earth from all the children without the ring. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that she does experience that temptation. But yeah, again, I don't think there is going to be any sense in which any of the Valar would see or find the ring and say, now the power is suddenly in my grasp. I could do this now, this thing that I've always wanted to do, and resisted the desire to do. But now, you know, the ability is in my grasp. Like, no way, man. Like, that's just not, it's not like that. Yes, exactly. As Trifle says, it's not that the Valar are like Bombadil and wanting nothing. It's just that if they wanted to do something like that, they can already do it and aren't. Yes, that's more or less exactly what I'm trying to get to, I think, there. Yeah. Exactly. But, okay. Well, no, see, Mad Violinist, I disagree with the premise. Mad Violinist says, to say that the ring is not of sufficient power would put Sauron below Feanor as a craftsman. Is that a position I want to take? Well, I'll say two things to that, Chris. One, yes. Actually, yes, I would take that. Do I think that Feanor, at the height of his powers in Valinor, in the time of the trees, was... like that the production of the Silmarils was a greater and more wondrous work of craft than Sauron's corrupt creation of the One Ring way down the road after he was already well advanced down the nihilistic road that had already claimed his master. Yeah, totally. I'm fine saying that, actually. I think that the making of the One Ring is itself a sufficiently corrupt project that I think he's already well into the, you know, like many trumpets blaring on one note school of song at that point. So do I think that, again, and I'm doing this by metaphor now, right? Do I think that the figurative song of Feanor in the making of the Silmarils was a greater and more wondrous song than the loud blaring on one single note? Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely would say that. Would feel comfortable saying that. But the second thing, Christopher, that I would say is that the two things are not. There's no need to parallel the two. To say that the Ring of Power isn't going to add anything or isn't going to add a temptation to the Valar is not to it has nothing to do with their comparative skill exactly. The Silmarils weren't adding power to the Valar either. You know, it's not, that wasn't the point of them. They're a totally different thing. As we've talked about, there are ways in which you can compare the you can parallel the ring and the Silmarils, and that is a very suggestive parallel in a lot of ways. But I also find it in the end a fairly clumsy parallel because the two things are just not very similar. The ring has a purpose. It's got a job. It was designed to perform a function. The Silmarils are not designed to perform a function. And everything that happens with them, oaths and desire and temptation and stuff, I have always said, I believe tells you more about, if you end up doing horrible things to get a Silmaril, that tells us more about you than it tells us about the Silmaril. Whereas if you end up doing horrible things to get the ring, it says something about you, but it also says something about the ring. Anyway, okay. But I've been over that a little bit. Yeah, Tormarthan says the function of a Silmaril is to sit there and glow happily. Right, exactly. Don't hate me because I'm beautiful. Like that's like the, that's the motto of the Silmarils. Yeah. Okay. I'll say. So have this impulse. And Flammifer, yes, I agree. Flammifer says Sauron screwed up his ring project. The 7 did not work like he wanted, and the 3 eluded him. Yeah. No, again, I that's one of the things that I would point to as well, Flammifer, to say when I was in my first point, saying that like Sauron's craftsmanship of the ring is clearly flawed. It's in one sense his great work, right? But it's only his great work in the sense that he invested very expensive raw materials in it. Right. It is not his greatest work in the same sense, I think, that Feanor's work was his greatest work. Feanor, and when Feanor talks about his own heart being tied up and that he would be slain if they were correct, I don't believe him. I've never believed him. I think he's a drama king at that point. He's just a whiner then. But nevertheless. There was another comment. It got washed upstream or downstream, I guess. Turenbar, it was something you said. Hang on, I'm almost there. Almost there. Okay, there it is. That's it, Turenbar. The comment of yours that I was kind of clinging to. Gosh, that was further ago than I thought. To get us back on the Aulë train, which is where I wanted to go as I am slowly backtracking back towards Glorfindel's paragraph. You had asked Turenbar, is there any desire for power in Aulë? Like, yeah, he's wild, yeah, he's unpredictable, but is there any desire for power in him? His desire seems to be to be free, to not to... he's restrained by no one but himself, though at the bidding of others. Yes. I agree. I don't think that he's... I don't think that... Dazak, welcome, by the way, Dazak. And we had 2 new people here, right? Dazak the Backwards Dwarf and Eruachil. Yeah. Welcome to both of you. Anyway, Dazak said, "Don't hate me because I'm beautiful" should be the title of my next book, Exploring the Silmarillion. It's kind of a catchy book title. I kind of like it. Yeah. But so Green Great Dragon, you're right. Melkor did offer him all the realm of Ulmo. That's that angle would suggest that he desired power, but again, I wonder if was it dominion that he sought, like to rule or was it freedom? Was it a freedom from restraint? That's always the impression I've gotten. Now there's very little behind that. I mean, all we're told is that he was offered the realm of Ulmo, the whole realm of Ulmo, that Melkor gave him. So, we have no further information about that. But what always seemed to me to fit best Aulë as he was described was the fact that he was, again, that idea of like, as of now, you're still kind of, you got to play by the rules, right? Somebody else is dictating the rules. Don't you want to be free? Don't you want to be able to do everything, that you want? Don't you want to be the boss? And Gilgalady, you're right that just because he was offered it doesn't mean it was desired, right? Well, no. I mean, the offer was at least briefly taken, right? Anyway, yeah. So, I don't know. I mean, it does. There is an element to there. For Thoughtless, I agree. For Thoughtless is, of course, remembering ahead to Sam's ring temptation. Of the garden swollen to a realm, is Aulë's temptation by Melkor. A little bit like that. Yeah, in some ways, a little bit like that. At least potentially, I guess, like that. So, would throwing the ring into the sea potentially have created problems? I mean, it's interesting because there's no glimpse in the text, like nobody's response to this has anything to do with like you know, consider the Maiar of the sea, and if not them, consider the fishes, right? Like, you know, basically there's no idea about corrupting the ocean or anything or anybody who lives therein. Yeah, no, I don't exactly know, Tessa, what a fish would do with a ring exactly, but Nathan wonders if you need to be incarnate to use the ring. Well, Sauron used it back when he was still fluid, right? I mean, like when he could, incarnate at will, not incarnate, when he could, manifest any physical form he wanted at will. He lost that power right at the fall of Numenor. But back then he was able to. So presumably, in other words, at the time when he made the ring and originally used the ring, he was still in the like kind of default Maiar situation, right? So presumably any other Maiar would be in the same situation. Right? Brandon is concerned that kind of sounds like how you get a Cthulhu, possibly. Yeah, there are certainly some areas in the sea where presumably you would not want to throw the ring. You would want to be very careful about that. I just read The Call of Cthulhu for the first time recently, actually. Yeah, Fort Dauntless is speculating that perhaps that's where Moby Dick came from, right? Possibly, except I think Moby Dick is clearly an agent of divine justice and judgment. So I think he works for the good guys. I've always thought of Moby Dick as more like Thorondor, but that's perhaps a personal crossover of my own. But anyway. So didn't we see a fish take the ring in a draft? Blanking JJ. I don't remember an actual fish story. Yeah. Yeah, I've never, I don't remember, JJ. I mean, there was, like, the connection with the fish was the great fish, of course, that takes Daegel's line and drags him in. But I don't... Maybe. Yeah. I'm completely blanking on it. See, this is, like... many times in my life and later career, people have marveled and said, how is it that you just like it's like you have the whole, Lord of the Rings and Silmarillion in your head all the time? My secret is that I'm almost always reading it. It's because I read and reread the texts at least once a year. Because if I don't, I'll forget them. And they go. And it's now been like a couple years, JJ, since I read The Return of the Shadow, and now I'm like, I don't remember. Is that what happened? I'm losing it. I got to reread it. Yeah. Okay. Anyway. Moby Dick is a whale, Mayaris. I like that suggestion, Kurtzimus. Okay. Well, we will get in a moment to Gandalf's response. Remember, Glorfindel's argument is only what he ends with here. In the sea, it would be safe, right? We can be sure if it's in the sea that Sauron is not going to get it again, right? So if our goal, and again, my subtitle for this slide has been sensible suggestions, right? Glorfindel is full of sensible suggestions and very reasonable analysis, right? Only two things remain for us to attempt: to send it over the sea or to destroy it. And as we've said, it seems to be that what he really means, send it over the sea, as a specific example. The two categories that he's putting forward are find a way to keep it away from Sauron permanently, ensure that he never gets it back, or destroy it. Those seem to be the two different categories of things that he's exploring, right? Option A for keep it away from Sauron forever is to send it over the sea. You know, if it's in Valinor, if they lock it in a vault in Valinor, right? Have Mandos lock it away. Does Mandos have safe deposit boxes? He probably does, right? For, select customers. So you put the Ring of Power in a very safe deposit box in Mandos, and then you can be sure that Sauron is never going to see that thing again, right? And if you throw it into the ocean, right, and sink it down to the bottom of the ocean where, like, he's never going to get it again, right? Then, okay, right, yeah, Fort Dauntless says, I wonder what would have happened if it were cast beyond the gates of night. A really good question. A really good question. Yes. Now, Amathorn, we talked about that, right? Of course, Sauron is still a troublesome force, even without his ring. And the argument that I was making before is that based on everyone, the knowledge of everyone present, Elrond, Glorfindel, even Gandalf, Tolkien, right? It's not obvious yet. They don't yet know that Sauron can't be defeated even without his ring, right? That it is going to turn out, and Gandalf will see very clearly by the time we get to the last debate after the Battle of Pelennor Field, that really Plan A, destroying the ring, is really it's the only plan. Right. If they don't accomplish that, then they're going to lose whether or not, he gets it back or not. It's just going to be easier or hard, right? Fast or slow. Elrond seems to be kind of getting there eventually, right? Like, could he resist Sauron? Could they stand up to him? No, he doesn't think that they could. So, in the end, that's a bad outlook. But again, remember, as I was saying before, and I think is still very important here, councils like this are where things like last alliances come from, right? And the last time there was a meeting like this, right? The last time in the last alliance, Sauron was in fact overthrown. First his armies were destroyed, then he was cast down and destroyed. Sauron is not undestroyable. And this is another thing I was just reflecting on earlier today, in fact. Remember that the entire Lord of the Rings concept, right? That is, from Sauron's point of view, the whole Ring of Power concept, the whole One Ring concept, is premised upon the idea that Sauron was going to struggle with overthrowing the Elf Lords. If he had no fear of Gil-galad, if he had no fear of Celebrimbor, if he had no fear of Galadriel, he wouldn't have made the Ring of Power. The Ring of Power was a risky move by Sauron. He was pushing his chips to the middle of the table, right? Because he felt that he needed to in order to give himself the leverage that would enable him to win. Had he thought that his ends of, conquest of Middle-earth and optimally enslavement of the elves themselves could be accomplished personally, right? That is, could be accomplished by war, by open struggle against them. If he really thought they stood no chance against him, he would have just done that. Why make the Ring of Power? The Ring of Power made him vulnerable. It was a risky move by him. It was I won't say a desperation move, but it was a gamble by Sauron, right? It was a gamble, and a gamble that he felt he needed to take. And absolutely, Ashnaz, you're right that he had a huge fear of the Númenóreans. Remember that he couldn't even fight the Númenóreans. Like, it was so one-sided in the other direction. Anyway, my point is, the Elf Lords, even the Elf Lords who are, yes, Gil-galad is gone, yes, Celebrimbor is gone, but they still have, some members of the old team here, right? Even without Gil-galad or Elendil or Celebrimbor, Could they make a fight of it? Right? Is it impossible to imagine that they could defeat ringless Sauron, who's now weaker than he was before? Right? I mean, is Sauron afraid of Galadriel? Yeah, I think he's wary of Galadriel, sure. So is it possible that they could do it? I don't think that Glorfindel rules it out. I think this is why he is raising these. And again, we talked about this before, but I'm feeling the need to reassert it and to work it through in my head again a little bit. Right. I'm sorry, Ashnag. You're right. They still have Celeborn. So forget about it, man. Sauron is hopeless. Absolutely. Right. I mean, yeah, absolutely. So yeah. I definitely think that the good guys here are laboring under the idea that if they could achieve option number one, Glorfindel's option number one, that is ensure that Sauron never can get his hands on the ring, if they can do that, then they can win, right? That at least gives them an excellent chance of proceeding to phase 2 of that plan, which is then overthrowing Sauron again. But it's been done before, right? It's been done before, and it can probably be done again. But yeah, and I agree. Several people are commenting on the fact that Fort Dauntless was just saying, in a direct battle, Sauron probably loses. The problem is the massive influence he's managed to exert all across the Great Lands. Exactly, and that's the thing. That's the information that I think they don't have here. I don't think they yet fully realize. Also, remember, most of the people here are elves. How long has Sauron been back in business? Everybody knows that Sauron had empires, right, before. Why aren't they thinking that he's just going to snap his fingers and whip up his empires again? He's been gone for millennia, right? How long ago was it that he reestablished himself and started putting out the old Sauron propaganda, right? Trying to reestablish old connections and build up old alliances and things like that? Decades, only decades, like a blink in an Elvish eye, right? Exactly. Eruachil, he just opened up shop this morning, practically, right? They might think it's only been 67 years, Tony. They might be thinking that, like basically they're still in time to nip it in the bud, potentially, right? So yeah, I think that's it's not at all shocking to me that they would either not have or not think through the issue there. And they find he's been much more efficient than they guessed. Because, of course, what will become clearer is that he's been working at this actually for a good deal longer than 67 years. No, he didn't set up shop back in, he didn't, sweep out the storefront and roll back the awning until 67 years ago. But his agents have been at work for a lot longer than that. But anyway, but yes, Fort Dauntless, if they were thinking nip it in the bud, the appearance of the Nine would have squashed that. Well, certainly given them pause, right? Exactly. Bjarnasonar, in actual fact, they've got less than a year before Sauron goes all out. Yeah, and they don't really know that necessarily. Okay, so it does seem to me perfectly reasonable, given whom we're talking about here, right? Given that this is a conversation among, Glorfindel, Gandalf, Elrond, the representative of Círdan the Shipwright, right, with the kind of implicit addition of Galadriel, whom Elrond speaks for implicitly. I cannot, and neither can they. Remember, I have not the strength, neither have they. Anyway, so, it makes sense that they would not rule out that possibility. Okay. Yeah, now you're right, Scudo, that Sauron doesn't know it either, and that his going all out is a result of, panicking, as Heir of Numenor also is saying there, when he sees Aragorn in the Palantir. Yeah, no, absolutely. But he's already mustering his armies even prior to that. Yes, he launches his attack sooner than he would have done, but he was already mobilizing his forces well before Aragorn looks into the Palantir, so it's not 100% there, but... Anyway, okay. So, let's look at the response. "Not safe forever," said Gandalf. "There are many things in the deep waters, and seas and lands may change, and it is not our part here to take thought only for a season, or for a few lives of men, or for a passing age of the world. We should seek a final end of this menace, even if we do not hope to make one." That's always been such a fascinating sentence to me. I know, Ray, right? Like we started a new slide. So, I at the risk of being hasty, I want to come to that last sentence last, which seems only sensible. His response to... He has a kind of a twofold response here to Glorfindel, right? His first response is, I think you're miscalculating, Glorfindel, right? In the sea, it would be safe. Not safe forever. There are many things in the deep waters. So that opens the door if you want to make the Aulë argument, though Aulë technically isn't in the deep waters. He's in the coastal waters. But who even knows what's down there? Brandon, if anything, that's like the Cthulhu argument, right? You gotta be careful. You gotta be careful. Who knows? Because of course, things in the deep waters, are they like the things that are deep in the earth, right? Yeah. Exactly. Whatever gnawed the tunnels at the bottom of Khazad-dûm. Exactly, Nathan. Exactly. And David, you're right. The ring does always have a way of being found. Yes, exactly. And here I would, right, the things that swam too greedily and too deep. Praise. Exactly. Yes. What I would, coming back to David's point there on YouTube, the ring always has a way of being found. It does. And here I would point out that the power not only of the ring itself, but of providence has been pointing in that direction. So I think there are a couple ways in which we could say this. First, he's saying, look, I think you're miscalculating. I don't think it's going to be nearly as safe in the bottom of the ocean. Do you know who's down there? Have you ever been to the bottom of the ocean? Right? That is a sketchy neighborhood down there, my friend. And like, you throw the ring down there and who knows who's going to get it and where it's going to end up. And, he doesn't say like, we could end up in a worse fix if something rises from the sea. And we do end up, in some kind of deeply uncomfortable Lovecraftian situation. But it's not, he doesn't say anything like that explicitly, though the many things in the deep waters phrase certainly opens up that kind of prospect. But I think that there's something else there too. And that is, as David was saying, the ring has a way of being found. Remember when we were talking last time about like reading the pattern, right? Sort of perceiving the way that the music is going, right? The way that the music has been going, like, has the ring been kept safe? Has it been kept secret? Yes. Providence has in fact contrived beyond any expectation. Had the ring merely stayed where it fell in the river, either Sauron or Saruman would certainly have found it because they were looking for it there, right? So it would have been found. It would have fallen into the wrong hands for sure. had it not been for the discovery by Déagol and then Sméagol and then Bilbo, in the chain of events that has contrived to conceal the ring first deep under the mountains where no one had any way of knowing that it could possibly have ended up, and then secondly in the Shire, in the remote and distant and peaceful Shire where no one would ever think to look for it. So and those things were at least partially orchestrated, I believe, pretty strongly by Providence. So again, yeah, I think that there's I think that one of the things that kind of underlies Gandalf's objection here is, if we do this, we're moving against the tide, right? This is not. Remember, I talked about that what should be shall be. This is not what should be, right? If there is a reason why the ring has on the one hand been concealed by Providence, but that same Providence that concealed it has brought it here today. Here we are, and here is the ring, as Gandalf has already said, right? It's been in Providence's power just to put it somewhere, right? And have it be never, ever, ever found again. But that's not where he is. That's not where it went. That's definitely not right. You're right. JJ says the ring could have been rolled down the river to the sea if that was the solution. Exactly, JJ. And it brings me back around to the whole often lies, truth is hidden thing, right? Or also to kind of turn that around. The reason why Saruman's lie was so convincing is that it is perfectly plausible, right? If Providence were to have intervened in order to disarm Sauron, that's kind of exactly the sort of way it might well have done so, right? Freebird, I agree. I think that Tolkien's handling of Providence, Providence, destiny, and free will is, for my money, it is the most thoughtful and sensitive depiction of those themes, like treatment of those themes, that I know of in literature. I don't know anywhere in another work of fiction that does a better job than Tolkien does of really thinking through those things in some really fascinating ways. Anyway. Yeah, exactly, Frumius Boojum. Providence could have cut out the middle hobbit there and just taken care of things directly. So again, I do think that that's part of the part of what underlies Gandalf's reactions here, right? But Mad Violinist, I want to go back to a point that you just made a couple minutes ago. Mad Violinist says it's also true that in a world in decline, the ring becomes more and more dangerous as the power of those who would resist it fades. I think this is behind Gandalf's urgency to end the threat right now rather than hoping that a future finder could do so. Mad Violinist, I think that's a really excellent point. It is not our part here to take thought only for a season or for a few lives of men or for a passing age of the world. We should seek a final end of this menace, even if we do not hope to make one. A passing age of this world, right? Maybe if we chuck the ring into the ocean, we'll make it into the fourth H, right? It'll happen. And to actually piggyback a little bit, Christopher, on that point, what would that look like? Okay, let's think for a second. Imagine they threw the ring in the ocean and then had a fight with Sauron. Now, they probably lose that fight because Sauron has way more armies than they do, though they don't know that yet. But anyway, let's imagine a scenario in which things go well, right? Imagine that, the Blue Wizards have, success unbeknownst to anybody, successfully performed, this sort of resistance effort, or this sort of undercover operation, and they, in fact, like, half the armies of Sauron turn against him, and like he doesn't win, and then he's overthrown by the remaining elf lords, and off they go. Right, so they have overthrown Sauron again, in like the Battle of the Lastest Alliance and end of the Third Age. Could happen. In theory, not going to happen. We know. But, like, again, work with me here. Like, let's imagine that that's possible. Then what? The same thing's going to happen again, right? We've already done this show, right? We've already done this stunt of, like, throwing down Sauron and killing his body, and then he took shape again. He would do the same thing again as long as the ring is around, right? And this, Christopher, is where we get back to the point that you were making. The power of those to resist him is in decline, definitely in decline. If they stand a really weak chance of beating him in the War of the Lastest Alliance here, should that happen, they'd have less chance than Elendil and Gil-galad had for sure. But even if they did, then how about the next time, right? Gandalf's argument in part here is we need to break this cycle, right? This is not going to pan out long term. A passing age of the world. So even if we end up rerunning this show again at the end of the Fourth Age, right? Well, then what, right? I mean, there's no scenario in which this is trending upwards, right? There's just no scenario in which that would be trending upwards. So, yeah. Now, Sarah asks, why does that will weaken over time? It's a really good question with a really, really long and complex answer that I don't have time to give into, but other than just to say, that's how Middle-earth works. Things decline. And in particular, the power of the elves declines. That is something that is very clear, that is very explicit. They are fading. They are changing. Their power is diminishing. When Galadriel says, I shall diminish and pass into the west and remain Galadriel, she's not celebrating that she's going to diminish. That was happening anyway. The question was whether or not she would diminish and also go into the west and remain Galadriel, or whether she would diminish and remain haunting the Middle Lands and either becoming a dark goddess or becoming an unhappy spirit wandering the lands. Like, those were her, and which, neither of which case would she remain Galadriel, right? So, Middle-earth is in constant decline. Absolutely, I agree. Yeah, right. It is. Tolkien was not influenced. No. Tolkien was not influenced by the concept of entropy, Kurtzimus, but I don't think he was surprised by the concept of entropy either. Yeah. Anyway, okay. Morgoth's ring. Exactly, Ray. Yeah, again, on the subject of really complicated things to talk about. But anyhow, okay. Yes. So I agree. So anyway, Christopher, that was a really wonderful observation, because you're right. And I think that we can hear that behind Gandalf's objection here. Another way to kind of summarize his comment here is the powers of good, right? The free peoples will never be in a better position than we are right now. Ever be in a better position right now to seek a final end of this menace, right? If we don't accomplish it, who will? For two reasons, right? One, because, again, as Christopher was reminding us, the good guys are in decline, right? So are they weaker now than they used to be? Oh, yeah. I mean, remember Elrond's reminiscences, right? Recalling how awesome, right, the forces of the Last Alliance and impressive they were, right? And they've got nothing like that now. But of course, he was even remembering that those forces were way, way, way less than the other forces in the War of Wrath earlier on. Each time, it's getting lesser and lesser. So anyway, not only that, but again, providence, right? What has been served up to them? Like, not only are they stronger than they will ever be again, ever, in future ages, but providence has served them up this hope, this possibility. The direction, if there is a direction that, things are trending, right, that the song is tending, it is towards the ring being first removed, hidden, concealed from both Sauron and Saruman, it turns out, and then delivered by a circuitous and totally unpredictable route to them. Here we are, and here's the ring, right? They are being given an opportunity. What is that opportunity for? An opportunity to hide it again? To try to do a better job of hiding it, a more permanent job of hiding it? Or to make a final end? And Gandalf is stating very clearly, it is not our part to take thought only for a season or for a few lives of men or for a passing age of the world. If we don't try to destroy it, then we're like that. Those seem to be our marching orders here. Gandalf he's being indirect, right? When he talks about a final end, it's clear what he's pointing towards. He's not yet stating it as firmly as Elrond is going to state it pretty soon. Elrond is finally building to his thesis for the whole meeting, but Gandalf is close to getting there, right? But again, one of the things that he is doing is pointing to this seems to be the job that we've been given, right? And for us to try to do anything else is, we might try to talk ourselves into it, but at the end of the day, it's shirking that job. So his first sentence, not safe forever, there are many things in the deep waters and seas and lands may change, is like an objection. Like, so footnote, Glorfindel, I'm not sure you're right about that. But at the end of the day, that's not what he's really focused on, right? Yeah, no, it's not at all impossible that Sauron will one day get it back. Or that, some dark eldritch thing will arise out of the seas and cause even more trouble. Yeah. Ari and Tulava, I agree. It's not till such a close examination of this that I realize exactly how much providence is actually involved. Agree. It's one of the things that makes Tolkien's treatment so admirable. He does so little to draw attention to it. It really does. So, okay. We should seek a final end of this menace, even if we do not hope to make one. The first half is the logical culmination of the paragraph, right? We should seek a final end of this menace. Right. And very apropos to Glorfindel. Note he's not only raising some specific objections to Glorfindel's suggestion about the ring being safe in the sea. He's also pointing out that shouldn't be the goal, right? Option one is not really a valid option. Just hiding it away forever does not seem to be what has been entrusted to us here. Again, as we were pointing out, that was already in the power of Providence and the Valar to bring about, if that's the end that they wanted, right? But that is not, in fact, what has happened. We should make a final end of this menace. So he's basically saying not only no to your particular suggestion, no to that whole concept. Let's take option one off the table. Forget hiding it, right? Destroying it is really our best hope. But then he slaps on that second clause. Even if we do not hope to make one. We should seek a final end of this menace even if we do not hope to make one. What? That's a remarkable statement. Even if we do not hope to make one. Gandalf's premise, and this, of course, is a premise that he's going to stick with later on, is they should do what they should do, not what they think they can do. That their choice of what to do should not be dependent upon their rational conclusions about its likelihood of success. Yeah, musical, exactly. Even if we know we won't succeed. Yeah, exactly. Even if we do not hope to make one. Even if we think we'll lose. Even if we're sure we'll lose. We should do it. Gandalf is here suggesting, I think, that, and it's interesting because it's almost like in the last phrase there, in the last clause there, he's like almost rebutted himself, right? I mean, again, one way to characterize, it's not our part here to take thought only for a season, is, like I said, we're not getting any stronger, right? Like if we run this show again in the Fourth Age, they're going to have a worse time of it. So we might as well try it now, right? That sounds like an argument that would say, well, it might look kind of grim, but these are the best odds we're ever going to get. So we might as well give it a shot now. Better now than later, right? Except he then makes it clear that that is explicitly not his argument, right? He's saying the opposite of, we should give this a shot now because our odds are greater than they will ever be again. What kind of hope is he talking about? I agree with the suggestion. Who was that? Heir of Numenor. I am assuming also that it is Umdir. So remember, two kinds of hope, right? Umdir, which is, I hope it's going to work out. Or like when somebody says, do you think you'll get, do you think you'll get the job, right? And you say, I hope so, right? That's Umdir. A positive anticipation of the future, right? Estel is the kind of hope which is much more like faith. So Estel is the belief that what should be shall be. That's Galadriel's sentence there has always been to me one of the pithiest definitions of Estel, essentially. Trust in the big picture. Trust that it's going to all work out. You're not going to be able to see the results. It might not work out locally. That is, doesn't mean you're going to survive or things are going to turn out well for you, right? But that what should be shall be, no matter what happens locally, right? So yes, Lissalinda, I do believe he's saying, even if we do not Umdir, essentially, to make one, this can't be a decision based on Umdir. This can't be a decision based on that kind of hope because we think it's going to work out. It has to be based on a larger hope. We seem to have been given this job. Therefore, we should do this job. Even if we don't think it's going to work, because who knows, right? He's not saying it may look hopeless, but it'll probably work out unexpectedly because, again, so he's not saying because Providence has assigned us this job, I feel that despite the appearances, it's going to work out, right? Like it might look bad. I know it looks bad, but Providence wouldn't give us this job if we couldn't do it. That's not what he's saying. He is saying this might end horribly, or at least what we would call horribly, right? We might all die terribly in hideous suffering, like that, and then everything that we love and know be like destroyed. That's totally on the table right here, right? But we trust that it's all going to work out. Yes, Matt, of course, you're very right to remember Sam becoming a thing of adamant and steel on the last leg of his journey to Mount Doom when he abandons hope. Yeah. When he is convinced that he is not going to survive. I agree, Ashnaz. Gandalf's phrasing is a little gentler than that. Yes. Absolutely. Tessa is wondering if there's a time in Middle-earth that people have Umdir and it actually works out. Well, I'm sure there must be some example. The Last Alliance, I can accept that, Mad Violinist. They set out to do a job to overthrow Sauron, and they did it. So, and it was not without its, costs, obviously. Fourth Dauntless says, I'd say Frodo's gamble of going through the Old Forest is an example of that, possibly. Beren and Luthien worked out. Okay, yeah, in a sense. Nahor says Thorin's company. Yeah, sure. I think it's possible. And I agree, Lisa Linda, making sure we're always asking that question when hope is mentioned. What kind of hope are we talking about? I do agree. That's a very relevant question. Now, of course, what we do see is that almost all of the time that those positive examples, right, when somebody sets out to achieve a quest and they do achieve a quest, it's interesting because they don't necessarily have Umdir. They don't necessarily have hope. I don't like Beren and Luthien. Did they have hope? Like, I don't think they went and did it because they're feeling confident that it would pan out. They're like, we've got a plan, and as long as we execute the plan, this is going to go great, right? I don't think that was their attitude as they approached, Angband. Even Thorin's company, well, they didn't have a plan of any kind, right? I guess you could argue that all they had was Amdir and no plan, potentially. Eärendil, maybe, kinda, except again, well, yeah, I don't know. Oh, goodness. There's lots of, Shafts, on Twitch says, step 1, gather dwarves. Step 2, who knows? Step 3, profit. That's pretty much their plan. No, I don't. Heir of Numenor, I do not think that Eärendil, was optimistic, that he thought like, I don't think that we can imagine, Eärendil trying to steer, Vingalot through the, through the mists, and, the magic isles and saying, never tell me the odds, right? Like, I don't think so. I don't think so. But, anyway, yeah. So, okay. We'll come back, of course, to Gandalf's assertion, or rather, it will come up again. Galdor wants to bring it back to cases, though. Now, I've mentioned my problems. Here's another one of my problems. Galdor. Galdor's next argument is a bit of my problem. Had we just stopped at Gandalf there, we should seek a final end of this menace even if we do not hope to make one. Okay, I'm on board, right? I'm on board, fine. But then Galdor speaks up. And that we shall not find on the roads to the sea. A final end of this menace. Not hope, I'm assuming. I'm trying to get his antecedent to that there. I think it's not hope. I think it's a final end of this menace that they will not find on the roads to the sea. If the return to Eärwain be thought too dangerous, then flight to the sea is now fraught with gravest peril. My heart tells me that Sauron will expect us to take the western way when he learns what has befallen. He soon will. The 9 have been unhorsed indeed, but that is but a respite, ere they find new steeds and swifter. Only the waning might of Gondor stands now between him and a march in power along the coasts into the north. And if he comes, assailing the white towers and the havens, hereafter the elves may have no escape from the lengthening shadows of Middle-earth. Okay. Yeah, I agree, Green Great Dragon. Like, he totally had to poke the Boromir bear here, right? Didn't he? Like, Boromir is going to pipe up as soon as somebody throws out a reference to the waning might of Gondor, right? I mean, that stings. That stings right there. I've never understood this. This has been a thing that I've had a really hard time with. Because Galdor, what you just said doesn't seem to make any sense to me at all. At all. Now, I guess some people are saying Galdor's a homer, right? That he's thinking about the Grey Havens, right? Don't put that on us guys, right? Like, if don't make us, don't paint a target on the Grey Havens, right? Look, we've been trying to keep the operation open for and with some success for a long time, right? We're running a ferry operation and we've been kind of keeping under the radar and it's been fine, right? Please do not draw the entire ire of Sauron in the direction of the Grey Havens, please. You're right, Fourth Dauntless. It is the fairy. I had never thought of that. Yeah. So I agree that it does seem a rather Grey Havens centric kind of speech that he's making here. But that's not my problem. That's not my problem with Galdor's speech. Which, though I'm willing to agree that his view here seems to be significantly narrower, certainly than Gandalf's, right? Gandalf is talking about, it is not our part to take thought for only for a season or a few lives of men or a passing age of the world. And Galdor is much more locally concerned, right? Arguably, he's thinking first and foremost of the Grey Havens themselves. But secondarily, at the very least, he's thinking about elves, right? And therefore much more narrowly. Yeah, Michael, he is like the elven Boromir in his provincialism. If Boromir has shown a sort of inescapable Gondorian provincialism, unfamiliar with the rest of the world behind the bulwark of the West, Galdor also, remember, he was admitting his ignorance, right? This is Mr. I know little of the Eärwain but the name. It's again, I'm not trying to blame him for this. I'm not saying Galdor's a bad person because of this. Nor am I only saying that this speech seems like a bit of a come down, a bit of an anticlimax after Gandalf's very portentous proclamation there at the end of his previous paragraph. Okay, Fourth Dauntless says I'd call this indifference rather than ignorance, which is a bit more blameworthy. Okay, I mean, possibly. I'm not trying to deflect any possible criticism from Galdor, though I guess I am kind of trying to put the best face on it, perhaps. But Tony says Galdor's like, I have one job, y'all. Right? Yeah, we just build ships these days, you know? Says Arnos. Absolutely. Yeah. But anyway, but it's not just that. If it were only that, I could get over it. Or I could just take this as a flaw in Galdor or whatever. But no, that's not my problem. It's his logic. My heart tells me that Sauron will expect us to take the Western way when he learns what has befallen. Now, I agree with that. That seems to me perfectly logical. I'm putting myself into Sauron's position. What are the worst case scenario? Well, no. I think that he is not going to think that Sauron is not going to assume that Plan A is going to be to send the ring to Valinor. He's going to think that Plan A. Sorry, I just saw Eruachil's comment that Galdor may be the fair weather, the fair weather fairy. Yes, something like that. Boy, that's a lot harder to work out audibly, Eruachil. Anyway, okay, sorry, getting distracted. Sauron is going to think that their plan A is going to be to claim it for themselves, right? His number one fear, obviously, is going to be they've got it in Rivendell. Well, crap, right? Elrond is going to take it, or Gandalf is going to take it, or Glorfindel's going to take it. I mean, could you imagine that? Like, Glorfindel, I suspect Sauron would actually be afraid, right? I mean, if Glorfindel takes up the ring, man, that's going to ruin Sauron's whole day. Right, if Glorfindel does that. So, I mean, oh man. So, like, he's got to assume that Plan A is somebody's going to take up the ring and use it against him. That's obviously the big concern. And we will see that is, in fact, the concern that is going to be occupying Sauron's imagination, right, as he moves forward. But I am willing to concede to Galdor that if Sauron gets past Plan A, right, into thinking like, okay, if Sauron is sitting there saying, all right, worst case scenarios here, let's brainstorm, people. Anybody think of wild and crazy ideas that if the good guys don't take up the ring, like, hear me out. If the good guys don't take up the ring, what might they do to it? I agree. If Sauron goes there, I think it's very likely that he is going to think, oh, God, oh, crap, they're going to just put it on a boat and take it over to Valinor, and then what am I going to do? Because I agree, like, that would be a major blow, right? I mean, he's going to have a hard time recovering it out of the very safe deposit box in Mandos. I know Sauron doesn't have Thuringwethel to bounce ideas off of anymore. It's true. He's really been suffering since then, I think. But do I think Sauron would comprehend why the Valar wouldn't take it? Sam, I don't think that Sauron would be capable of making the same conclusion. I think that Elrond is wiser than Sauron as far as this goes, because I think that Sauron is in a different place in relationship with the music in general and the Valar in particular. I don't think he does have a clear bead on what they're thinking and what they might do. Remember, he's going down Melkor's road, and by the end, Melkor he was totally taken by surprise by the War of Wrath, because he thought he knew how things were going. He thought he had the Valar pegged. Their mercy, their pity on the people of Middle-earth, he never saw coming. And So I think Sauron is the same. I think that he doesn't understand them. I think that he doesn't get them. And I don't think that he's going to be as good as Elrond and others at kind of being in touch with this. He's totally out of tune with the music now, Tony. Absolutely. He is now full time in the drowning out the music business. That's what he does. Right. Again, he's now 100% on the blaring loud trumpet notes to try to drown out the rest of the music. He's taken up that lead now, and that's absolutely what he does. Yes, agreed, Nathan. Sauron is like Satan in Dante's Inferno, stuck, turned in on himself, and only understands himself. Yeah, little spoilers there for our Inferno discussion. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I agree, JJ. I don't think he can hear the opposing music. He just hears like noise that he's trying to drown out, the noise he's trying to contest with. Absolutely. So no, I don't think that he does. He would do that. But so would he know? Would he calculate and be like, nah, I'm going to call their bluff on this one, right? Let him try to put it on a boat. If I know the Valar, they're not going to have anything to do with this. No, I don't think he has the ability. I think he lacks the, it's not just that he lacks the data. I kind of think he's at this point almost lacks the apparatus, to go there. Yeah, he just has this ringing in his ears, Rowan. Yeah, it's something like that. Anyway, okay, so yes. But again, I will give Galdor the one thing I will go along with Galdor as far as that. As far as saying that yes, I agree that it is possible that Sauron is going to think they might try to take it to the sea, because he certainly would view that as a kind of disaster, right? For his part. So, sure. But, but it's the rest of what Galdor says. If the return to Eärwain be thought too dangerous, wait a second. Do we know that? Remember that when that was put forward, that was Aristor, wasn't it? Who said that? What they said was not that we will never make it back to the Old Forest from here. What they said was that they could not go back unmarked, unguessed. Like unguessed, unmarked by any spy. The point was that if they take the ring back to Tom Bombadil, Sauron will eventually find out what they did with it. He's going to figure it out. And so therefore, eventually, he's going to go and attack Tom Bombadil and try to take it back. That's where that conversation led before. The point wasn't that, we'll never make it. Like, it's pretty much functionally impossible for us to get back to Tom Bombadil by now. I mean, whatever. So he says, if the return to Eärwain be thought too dangerous, then flight to the sea is now fraught with gravest peril. Peril in what sense? If it's the same kind of peril, then he means peril of discovery. I can agree with that. That there is no way they could possibly take the ring back to the Grey Havens unguessed, unmarked by any spy. Yeah. No. Totally agree. Sauron would definitely twig to what they were doing if they tried to take the ring back to the sea. 100%. Okay, so maybe that's all he means. My heart tells me that Sauron will expect us to take the Western Way when he learns what has befallen. Okay, Galdor, I'm not 100% sure I agree with your heart, but okay. But again, I'm willing to go with you there. He soon will. Does Sauron call all time soon? How soon will he learn about this? Galdor? The 9 have been unhorsed indeed, but that is but a respite, ere they find new steeds and swifter. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Where are they going to find new steeds and swifter than they had? I mean, their horses have drowned, right? So, where? But okay, whatever. Let's assume they can find good horses. Let's even assume they can find better horses, right? Or maybe he's thinking Sauron has a backup plan. Maybe he knows something we don't, Tony. I don't know. Swifter steeds might be found in Rohan, but seriously? Like, how fast can the riders without their horses get to Rohan? I'm guessing that if they can get there faster than a horse could ride, they wouldn't need horses in the first place, would they? So, okay. Maybe he is Fourth Dauntless, thinking that they'll come back from Mordor at the head of an army. Possibly. But they've got some time in that case. If the Ringwraiths have to get back to back to Mordor is what I meant to say. If they get back to talking about the Silmarillion a lot lately. If they get back to Mordor and then have to rally the troops and set out through Gondor, because whatsoever we might think about the waning might of Gondor, it's going to at least be a brief impediment, isn't it? It'll be at least a temporary annoyance to the armies of Mordor. Okay. Yeah. Asphaleth is pretty fast, right? Like, let's put Glorfindel on Asphaleth. Now we don't have Shadowfax anymore to do the horse race that we all wanted to do, but we still have Asphaleth, right? So let's get Glorfindel on Asphaleth, have him sling Frodo carrying the ring over his saddle bow, and make a beeline to the Grey Havens. Might their progress be marked by some spy such that Sauron figures out where they went? Yeah, I think that overwhelmingly likely. Is Sauron going to be able to do a darn thing to prevent it? What? What is he going to do? What could he possibly do? How could he do anything that's why my subtitle for this slide is, what is the extent of Galdor's geography? Because I'm like, seriously, have you looked at a map, Galdor? Do you know how far you are away from Mordor? Do you know how much closer the Grey Havens are to you right now than Mordor is? I don't get it. I don't get it. So, I don't, right now, Trifle's saying, is there a ship ready? Maybe not. Maybe Galdor knows where they are in their production line, right? And it's not about how fast you can get to the Grey Havens. It's how fast you could take off from there, right? Yeah, like Quibot says, maybe Galdor is just dumb. Look, it's possible. It's possible. Yeah, I don't know. But see, Rowan, I would think the same objection would move forward. That is, Rowan was saying, I guess for elves, Sauron announced himself, like a couple days ago. So the waning of Gondor, the waning might of Gondor might only last out for a couple minutes, right? Yes, but again, by the same measure, the trip to the Grey Havens should only take about 15 minutes, right? So, I mean, like, how much time do they need? Siri's responding to my to my looking at my watch and mentioning 15 minutes. Yeah, I mean, like, it's like they have a really big head start, Galdor. Like, it's And Ruhil says he did exclude himself from the wise earlier implicitly. And Heir of Numenor says that here we thought he was just being modest, right? Apparently, no, he was spot on. He was spot on. Praise is now speculating that perhaps this is why Círdan sent him to get him out of his hair. That's a little unkind, but who knows? I don't know. Only the waning might of Gondor stands now between him and a march in power along the coasts into the north. I mean, Fort Dauntless, I agree with your claim before. That he is clearly envisioning an army marching out of Mordor, like it did in the Second Age. Galdor remembers, right? Galdor remembers when Eriador was full of the armies, the invading armies of Sauron. This is what he foresees, right? And all he's got to do is, step over the waning power of Gondor on the way, right? Just kind of stomp them on the path through. And that's not going to stop him. So, open door into Eriador, just like before the establishment of Gondor back in the Second Age. So, great. Tony thinks this is Galdor's version of Struck by Lightning. Yeah. I mean, Kit was saying it's like an Elvish panic attack happening here. Perhaps. Ooh, ouch. Yes, you're right. Tessa says that I'm one to talk about being unkind to non-wise elves. Ooh, oh, yeah, Tessa with the telling stroke on behalf of Celeborn. You are so right. I am absolutely guilty as charged. Yeah. Okay. Now, Corey Schwab, I agree with you. I think that to me is the most sensible and generous, I would add, reading of this passage. Again, it's like the not Glorfindel, very far from Glorfindel, that Galdor is just losing it here and doesn't have a clear idea what he's talking about. Is this is another sign of the elves fading? Kurtzima says, it's possible. Like, we can't rule it out, but the most generous reading, I think, is Corey Schwab's reading, which says that he's not talking about getting rid of the ring. He's not saying we're going to be incapable of completing this task. Like, we have no Amdir, no hope of succeeding in the send the ring into the sea or send the ring to Valinor, either one of those plans, right? Because both of those plans involve us taking the ring to the Grey Havens. If we do, he's going to know where we went, and he's going to come after us, and we're not going to be able to stop him. And he's not wrong. He's absolutely not wrong about those things. And I think the more I think about it, Corey, the more I think you're right, that he's not saying... I think that the thing that always got to me, I always understood Galdor to be saying, if we attempt this, we will fail. So we shouldn't attempt it. That's the reason we shouldn't attempt it, because it's not going to work. Sending the ring to the sea is not going to work. And the sentence that always it was his second one. If the return to Iarwain be thought too dangerous, then the flight to the sea is now fraught with gravest peril. I always took his fraught with gravest peril to mean we can't make it. We'll never make it. And I was always like, dude, what are you on about? Like, what kind of assets do you think Sauron has in this region? Right? I mean, yeah, he had the Nazgul. That was a big deal, man. Though not a Glorfindel level big deal, right? But still, they were a big deal. But they've been dealt with, and at the very least, they're unhorsed. When they were horsed, they couldn't stand up to Glorfindel, and now they're not. So whatever. Like, what do you think is going to prevent you getting from Rivendell to the sea if you guys set your mind on it and you all set out, right? Like, let's all set out in a big troop, right? Glorfindel on Asphalloth, and we'll get all the other elf lords and Elrond himself and Gandalf and Aragorn and even Boromir can tag along, and let's ride in force to the beach from here, right? Really, like what could possibly Sauron do from where he is with the assets he's got in the field to oppose them? Not plausible, not possible. That's what always confused me. But if we understand instead that that's not what he meant. What he meant was he'll know. It's too dangerous to go back to Yarwain because he'll see where we went. He'll definitely see where we went. There is gravest peril, not of failure, but of detection on the way to the sea. That sets things in a different trajectory. Because then I agree, as Corey Schwab was saying, we don't, that's not what he's worried about. We could probably succeed in sending it away. But it's all going to be over for us at that point. And Turambar, you're right. He is right. The havens are absolutely essential to elvendom on Earth because it is their only hope against becoming specters. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I mean, if he's got one job, and he's right that it's an important job, is his viewpoint a little bit provincial, a little bit narrow, a little bit, is he kind of focused on his little purpose there? Yes, because his little purpose is an important purpose. He's got a role, and it's a really important role. So yeah, this works. This works for me. Yeah. Okay. Prey says, how is the ring going west more trackable or obvious to spies than the ring going south, as ends up happening? We're going to get to this next week. Next week, we're going to get to this. And this has been fantastically helpful to me because this really changes things for me. One of the things which has always been one of my least favorite things about the whole Council of Elrond, honestly, but of course, especially in this sector of it, is that Tolkien uses the argument, that's what the enemy shall least expect argument, quite a bit. And I've never been a huge fan of it. Like, that always felt to me a little bit weak. Like, we shouldn't do this because this is what Sauron will expect. And like in this case, and this is one of the cornerstones of why I was always a little bit impatient with that argument. Because what I want to say to Galdor is, like, who cares if he expects it if he can't stop it? Right? I mean, maybe he will expect it. But again, there's no way he could possibly stop you. Yeah. So, yep. With this stuff in mind, with that new understanding of that first full sentence there, and Corey Schwab's very sensible. So, C. Schwab, thank you very much for your point there. I think you've solved my problem almost completely. I feel very satisfied by this response. Yeah. So I think it's going to help. I think that reading is going to be the gift that keeps on giving as we move forward into Elrond's logic in the next slide. A little teaser next time. I think that we will get Elrond's final declaration, the moment that he has been building up to for the entire Council of Elrond, next week. So we're gonna leave it there. gonna leave it there. We did cover some ground today, did we not? Look at that. So very good. Thanks everybody for joining us for our text discussion. We'll be back next week. Tune in next week to hear Elrond say. So that's where we're going to get. It is field trip time, and we're going to go back to our explorations of Middle-earth, which of course are supposed to be in conjunction with our analysis of the book. But of course, when we proceed this slowly through a scene in which everyone is sitting around the table talking, there's only so long we can explore the representation and adaptation of that room in The Lord of the Rings Online. So we are branching out, of course, and we have been looking around the Vales of Anduin, having explored where the ring was not, following the theme of Isildur and discussing some things that we're talking about there. Anyway, so we are going to head back. So this week, so Valora couldn't be with us. She's unwell this week, but she should be back next week. And we're going to head to Holtvis, I think, which means I'm going to, instead of porting, I'm going to head over to the stable in South Bree here and go to Holtvis, because I'm pretty sure Druid's Fire can get to Holtvis from there, right?
Yes, you can.
All
Our
right.
Ranging Stable Master. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Druid's Fire. Thanks for joining us in Valori's absence there.
Indeed. Though tomorrow, Standing Stone is adding a new section of Breeland to the party.
A new section of Breeland?
Yes.
The Southward Road?
No, sadly, no.
Oh, that's the part of Breeland I'm always so disappointed at how soon the Greenway ends.
Maid of Lions likes to tease us when that's going to happen. I'm taking bets as to whether it's going to end before your class does.
What,
Which will come first.
the development
Yeah.
of the so that you can ride the Greenway all the way from Fornos down to
Indeed,
Minas Tirith? Yeah.
Because Bingo, of course, goes on the northern part from the south.
Right.
Before you get to the South Farthing, but we don't see what happens there.
Yeah.
But it's the Wildwood, which is going to appear between Trestlebridge and Evendim, and there's new dock masters that you can use to get thither and yonder, and it'll be fun.
Oh, right, the new the way up to Evendim. Right. So that's gonna be officially released in the main game. That's cool. Okay, so let's see. So Druid's Fire, could you help us to follow up?
I'm doing it.
Excellent. So whom should people contact in game?
Kyressa, Kyressa.
All right. Very good.
And where are you, Corey?
I'm at the South Bree Stable Master.
How can I be of service?
And I'm looking for Holtvis. Oh, hang on.
Be toward the bottom.
Yeah, hang on a second. I gotta recalibrate things here. Yeah, okay, there we go. Here we are. Resuming my there we go. Trying to get my display sorted out there. Good. All right.
We're waiting for you.
No problem. There it is. Holtvis. Got it. En route. Or maybe.
Nope.
I just froze.
Alas,
Okay,
Ardent Crayon Lord of the Rings online is not available on any current gaming console.
It is not available on
Nope.
consoles. Nope. Just PCs. And Macs, though with some less stability on Macs. Okay, good old Holtvis. All right, here we are. Okay. Excellent. So, we ready to head out?
We are
Because-
just organizing.
Good. So while you finish organizing, I'm going to look back at the map again. We are almost done. We've been almost everywhere here in the Vales of Anduin. And we are we've been all around the south. We went down to the Garden Fields, of course, and explored all around there. We've been all the way up into the mountains, all the way down to the borders of Lothlorien, up to Rosgobel. We've been everywhere except this northern bit. So which is, of course, very important because we get the Carrock here and we get Bjorn's house over here. And those are our final. We even went to the gate into Mirkwood. Our final frontiers here in the Vales of Anduin are the Carrock and Bjorn's house. So we're gonna head to the Carrock. I don't know if we'll do both. Probably just the Carrock tonight, and then Bjorn's house next week, and then we'll be done with the Vales of Anduin. Okay, so let's head out here if everybody's ready. It's a lovely evening here in the Vales of Anduin. And yes, absolutely, Cook of Wooten Miner, they're absolutely still creating new content for Lotro. They are, right now, the most recent thing that they just did. Let's see, which way do we go from here? We go
this
right?
Way, to
we go
the
left.
northwest.
Okay. Turn left. Oh, right, go down to the river and then head north from there. Anyway, yeah, they're working on Mount Gundabad up in the north, so they're continuing to round out the explorable map. It still remains my hope that we're going to get, of course, like, I would like them to get to the Grey Havens, and in particular, of course, I would like them to do the Scouring of the Shire. But understandably, you know, many of us who love the game are a little bit reluctant for them to go in that direction because, like, once they get to the Grey Havens, like, you know, it kind of feels like the end of the line, right? So there's plenty to explore before we get to the Havens. I'm eager to see them, but I can wait.
The interesting thing is that world builder Matt Elliott, aka Scenario, just did another of his live streams on Wednesday of last week, where he was asked what places would he like to build the most, and his immediate answer was the Tower Hills. The
Tower Hills, yeah. No, I mean it's certainly. There's no question in my mind that it's got to be like a top destination on everybody's wish list, right? I mean, that's very sensible. But at the same time, the Tower Hills would be fun, but okay, hang on, where's the there's the Carrock. Okay, I see it now. And where's the bridge? Where are we in relationship to the bridge? There it is. Okay, there's our broken bridge back there, where we were last week. Just getting my bearings here. Anyways, at the same time, I would really like to go to Rune and Harad. Thank you. Like, let's go down to Harad more. I totally would be into
Severland's
that.
been teasing that for 3 years now.
I believe it. I know that. I mean, talked to them about that. You know, they mentioned the hopes to eventually get to Harad years ago. Exactly, JJ. Let's help to rebuild Rune and Harad. There's going to be so much that will have been destroyed, not just physically destroyed by Sauron and Sauron's armies, but culturally destroyed. Right, all of the ways in which Sauron would have just laid waste to the people and their cultures in his desire rapidly to rebuild his kingdom and his armies is.
You missed your exit.
I missed the exit?
Yep.
Okay, so out of curiosity, what's up this way? If we keep going this way.
That would be the Wells of Langflood.
The Wells of Langflood? Really?
Mm-hmm.
How fascinating. Framsburg! No way! No way! Do they have... Oh... Can we find the, like, former home of Scatha the Worm?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
There's a whole bunch
man.
of story of quests
I
you
bet
need
you.
to find all the goodies.
Oh, absolutely. So up here where the Eotheod used to be? Oh, man. I bet you we can find like the very rock that Eorl the Young's dad hit his head on and died.
There is a story about that.
I would expect to find it. That's the kind of attention to detail that I would that I have long come to expect from Lotro world building.
Oh yeah, Maid of Lions and of course Chris Pearson are all over every little tidbit in the appendices and all the side stuff that they have access to, and you know they cram every last word into the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely, so cool. Right, and then we go right, and then up north of there, if I keep following this road long enough, then I'll get all the way to Gundabad, right?
And get immediately murdered by 130 mobs, yes.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a given. I mean, goodness, I'd probably get murdered by the deer here if I didn't have folks protecting me. I'm level 120, but I think that Narnian may well be the wussiest level 120 in the entire game. So, yeah. Okay. Anyway. All right. Fine. So I will curb my enthusiasm to continue heading north, at least for now, and we will head up. So where's the turn?
Back here to the north. You were right.
Did I miss it again?
Yes. It is, to be fair, kind of hard to see when it's dark out.
Is there like a road?
No.
Oh, there's not a road. Okay. But anyway,
you don't believe in paving things.
That's sorry, I can't.
There we go. Greensand's got a big red light.
Anything help? Okay.
Thank you, JJ.
That'll do it. Okay. I'm looking at. Here we go. That's what I wanted to do. So that's the Carrock right there. Is the Carrock due west of us right now? Yes. Oh yeah, I can see the path up it. Okay, great.
Yeah, when I took Maven on our unauthorized adventure into the unfinished Carrock, you couldn't climb up the hill. And alas, unless you're a Bjorning, you can't go in the cave. Unless they changed it.
Right. Okay. All right.
But if you go in front of it, you'll get another tick off of the deed.
All right. So I'm dismounting because I think I'm not going to need my horse from here. I always meant to see you all safe over these mountains, said Gandalf. There we go. What, has somebody lit votive candles here?
Yeah, that's part of a Bjorning quest.
Oh, okay. And nice to see their beeswax candles. You can see the beeswax around them. That's nice. Okay, so this cave, this is the cave, so near where they were. My race is not compatible. I know, I'm not a Bjorning. Okay, so only Bjornings can go into this cave.
Right, it's a racial quest thing, yeah.
What's in the cave?
It's just basically you talk to somebody. It's kind of like a visit to, do like a meditation thing. I honestly don't remember. It's been such a long time.
Okay.
But it wasn't anything.
It's not part of the. I know it's not part of the Bjorning starter thing because I did the Bjorning starter thing ages ago, like right after the Bjornings came out, and that was of course long before this region was developed. Okay. So, but anyway, in there is the campsite where they sort of recovered themselves, where they gathered themselves, that is Gandalf and the dwarves and Bilbo, after they got dropped off by the eagles. But they didn't get dropped off by the eagles down here. They got dropped off further up. So we should go. I see everyone else has already gone up, and I'm slow. So here we go. We're heading up to the top of the Carrock. Now, these steps always kind of confused me. There were steps cut into the Carrock. Weren't there something like steps?
I don't honestly recall.
I'm trying to remember if there was what kind of description there was of that, because they descended. I know they didn't rappel down the Carrock when they were dropped off, and I have a vague memory of there being. Oh, good, the sun is rising. How lovely. I have a vague memory of something like a reference to steps. Can somebody find that? I like the idea that Bjorn, the sense that they give in the game here with the stairs, because I mean, this is, as several people are saying, Thank you, JJ. I was hoping you would paste in some text for me. Here's the text. There was a flat space on the top of the hill of stone, and a well-worn path with many steps leading down it to the river. I thought there were steps. Across which a ford of huge flat stones led to the grassland beyond the stream. There was a little cave, a wholesome one with a pebbly floor, at the foot of the steps and near the end of the stony ford. So exactly like they've depicted it here, a well-worn path with many steps. So one of the questions obviously is why? If Bjorn just climbs up here for the view occasionally, right? I mean, if that's the why of the Carrock or of the steps up the Carrock, then, and this is a cliff right here, right? I shouldn't continue there. If that's the why of these steps, then it truly does not really make all that much sense for there to be a set of steps here, because it would have taken a very great deal of work. So did Bjorn build the steps? I don't know, Emily. I mean, it says that it's well worn. So one possibility, of course, that it's been worn for generations, right? That this is an old path that Bjorn has been using, but that he didn't develop. And honestly, it's a little hard for me to understand, well, even the how, to some extent. How would Bjorn make this path? But why would he make this path? I mean, great view, and important for him to look out about the lands around him, to see anything sketchy going on. I can understand that, but he wouldn't have to carve a whole huge, well-worn path. I mean, there would be other mechanisms by which he could get up there, right? So, yes, JJ, that's exactly what I was thinking of. JJ says, when Gandalf is explaining why he calls this stone the Carrock, Gandalf says that Carrock is his name for such things. Yes, so he says maybe Carrock is his name for big rock somebody carved steps into. Exactly. That, I think, is a really interesting proposition, and that's precisely what I was thinking, JJ, as I was coming up the lower end of the steps there, was what if Carrock is his name for not rock in the middle of river, but for whatever this place was, for whatever this place was intended for. Because if Bjorn didn't make the steps, who did and why? Again, I doubt it was just for a lookout post. Maybe there is some other purpose for the Carrock. Unknown purpose. Maybe it has some kind of symbolic value, some kind of quasi-religious value. I don't know what kind of purpose the Carrock might have had and what kind of associations it might have had. Bjorn has people. He has a history. Would there have been some of his own ancestors which had history here? Would this have been some kind of sacred place or place of refuge or place of meeting, or I don't know what exactly, right? But there could be lots of different possibilities of that kind, which could lead Bjorn to view this place as, in some sense, a special place. And I was thinking precisely that same thing, JJ. What if he does? What if that's what Carrock means to him? Not just big rock in the middle of river. So
There's
yeah.
also other possibilities too.
Yeah, definitely.
Because Mirkwood/Greenwood the Great is just to the east.
Uh-huh.
And as you saw from the maps, Fromsburg, there were men to the north, and we know there were dwarves around. So any one of the races could have built these steps.
Yep.
Though the lack of ornamentation would kind of make me feel it was a mannish thing versus elves or dwarves, because they love decorating everything.
Oh, yeah, agreed. This does not look like Elvish or Dwarvish work. I would almost be ready to rule that out of hand, really, because rule that out of hand, I mean to say, because you're right. I mean, not only that, but shoddy workmanship. I mean, look at these steps, right? I mean, like, they're old, sure, but, like, they're barely here, right? We've been up lots of ancient dwarvish flights of steps, and look at how crooked they are, right? I mean, look at that. Look at that flight of steps, meandering its way.
Maybe it was the foreman from the bridge.
Yeah, no. Like there, you just get like a set of steps with a disjoint in the middle, right? No. This was not a conversion from metrics to. Okay, may the wind under your wings bear you where the moon strides and the sun. Wait, interesting. They changed it.
Well, as you know, they have to.
Yeah, they have to. Right. Okay, so we've got an eagle here. An eagle, not stable master, but eagle master thing. Okay, so here's the top of the Carrock where they get dropped off. Okay, anyway, so like I said, I refuse to believe that any dwarf made those steps. And I agree, the elves would have made them much prettier. And there would be arches, and there would be wholly unnecessary pillars, and there would be trellises, and there'd be all kinds of things, right?
And filigree if the dwarves were there.
Yeah,
I'm
no.
sorry, the elves, my bad.
Exactly, no, totally. And there'd be like fancy knotwork and straight lines if the dwarves were here. So I totally agree. This is absolutely a mannish construction, and even a rustic mannish production. It's not Númenórean, clearly, because they'd have decorated too. So I think it's definitely pre. Well, hang on a second. No, I can't say it's definitely pre-Númenor, because post-Númenor still spans a really wide period, right? I mean, the stairs could be 1,000 years old and still be post-Númenor. I mean, post-Gondor even. So, no, it doesn't have to be pre-Númenorian, and there's no direct evidence really to suggest or imply that necessarily. But here's the other thing that interests me. I don't see anything up here. Wait, is there the evidence of flagstones? Yes. This was once paved. Yeah. Okay. So paving stones on the top here. So this area was once deliberately flattened and paved. But I don't see any other evidence of any other carving, building, or work of any kind up here on top of the Carrock. Again, here I'm just trying to guess what it was for. What the purpose of the people who put the stairs in was.
Which is actually interesting because Scenario is aware of your perambulations, and he basically cautioned the chat that we should not read into anything that we think about why something exists, what asset they use is to, write it in character headcanon for. I'm like, yeah, try telecoring that. No.
Nope. His caution is of no avail.
I knew that was going to be the answer.
There's no power in the verse that'll stop me reading into things. So there we go. Yep. It's okay. It's okay. This is why like sometimes people will say things like you should ask the developers. And I'm like, no, I don't want to. That's not the answer. Because it's not that I'm not interested in their perspective on or what was going on in their heads. It's only that I find it irrelevant to the question of our analysis. Their intentions are beside the point. It is the finished product that matters. It's not about the intentions of the devs. It's about the meaning of what the devs have created. Exactly, just like the death of the author, but for video games, Trifle. Not really. I don't really agree with the death of the author. No, it's not about that. Trifle, you know what? There's a sentence that C.S. Lewis wrote that changed my life as an English professor, as an English student, really. And it's one of the most profound pieces of literary criticism that C.S. Lewis ever wrote. This sentence. He said, it's got a semicolon in it. It sounds like two sentences, but it's one sentence. He said, authors intend, books mean. Yes. books have meaning. Authors have intentions. The intentions of an author sometimes line up with the meaning of a book, but not always, not even often. Authors intend, books mean. And when you're thinking of those two things, so it's not that the author is dead or that the author's intention doesn't matter, it's that the author's intention and the meaning of the book are not the same thing. You're not talking about the same thing. And you can be interested in the meaning of the book without either A, knowing, or B, caring what the intention of the author is. It's relevant, but it's, or rather it's interesting, but it's not relevant. It's certainly not identical to the meaning of the thing, right? Of the text. So when we're doing explorations and I'm reading into things, I am interested in the meaning of this text, this game world that we have here. And my interest in what the devs were intending when they set it up is only very secondary. And I am not going to permit it, even should I know what it is, to infringe upon the meaning of the text. Because again, often the meaning of the text well transcends the intentions of the author. In fact, I would go so far as to say that's always true in the case of good books. I don't think there was ever a single good book whose meaning was 100% in the control of the author. I think it's almost like a literary rule, right? If the meaning of the book does not get out of the control of the author, does not escape the intention, does not go beyond the intentions of the author, it's not a great book. I mean, I don't think it's ever happened with a great book. It seems to me almost by definition, a book becomes great when it ends up doing something and saying something and meaning far more than its author ever knew or intended it to mean. And, you know, great authors admit that, like Tolkien often did. Tolkien never really felt like fully in control of his story and was always talked about, discovery rather than intention, right? Rather than his own plans, right? But you often see, and this is why I've often expressed, I kind of rolled my eyes at J.K. Rowling, because she doesn't get this principle and feels that in order to be considered a great author, you have to have intended everything, and you're doing it wrong, Rowling. Your books are greater than you are trying to make them be. But anyway, off literary tangent.
Sorry.
No. Back to the pressing matter at hand, which is why did they pave the top of the Carrock? So let's think for a second. And JJ, I want to come back to your question, your landscape question there, because I think it's a really good one. But I want to come back to the question of the paving stones. Given the evidence that we have here, the evidence of A, the lack of things up here, and B, the presence of stairs and paving stones, and the conclusion that we have come to based on the evidence that this was a human construction and not a Númenórean construction. So this has nothing to do with Gondor. It has nothing to do with the elves or the dwarves that we can see. This is why I come back to the question of Bjorn's ancestors, right? Maybe his very distant ancestors. Could these steps have been made in the second age? Maybe. First age? Who knows? I think the steps would be in worse shape by now if they were first age steps. Those steps don't look a day over, 2,000 years, but who knows? Anyway, okay. So what do you think? Theories? Why did they come up here? My theory... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, this was not a peaceful land, so the lookout for military purposes definitely would come to mind.
Agreed.
And, keep an eye on the high pass. You can see the road to the south. So you'd want to double check and, make sure there's no orc or goblin movements going on.
Yeah. You even might want to keep an eye on the dwarves if you don't trust them very much. And I would even guess maybe that if you are one of the non-Numenorian humans who live in this region, you might not entirely trust the elves either. So you can keep an eye on a bunch of your neighbors this way.
Yep. And, of course, the Otheod to the north as well.
Yep. Are those...
They would defend it.
Yeah. Are those horse guys coming south? I mean, that would be threatening, right? So sure.
Well, not necessarily threatening, but, if you don't want strangers in your house.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Well, no, I mean, anybody strange is a threat, potentially. Yeah, no, that's all I mean by threatening. Something that you should definitely know about because who knows, it might be bad. And then there's the mountains, of course, where there are goblins and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, there's no question this is a great lookout spot. I mean, that's certainly true. But the thing is, I don't know, maybe you wouldn't need to build anything up here. It's not like you'd need to build a tower on top of this. Like you'd be fine just standing here. Why go through the trouble of building a tower?
You'd actually be in a very bad position to put a tower up here.
Yeah.
What you'd want to do is lay flat on your belly so the people
nobody can
passing
see you.
by can't see you. Right.
Yeah. I know you're right. So no, I agree. A lookout post, but here's the thing.
A careful one.
Yeah. If that's your plan, your stairs are way too big, right? I mean, like anyone walking by on the eastern side, not on the western side. But on the eastern side, anybody walking down that bank of the river is going to see those steps, and so like you're like broadcasting the fact that you have a lookout post here. So it's not stealthy. That's one of the factors that I lay stress on here in trying to think through what the purpose of this place would have been, is it does not seem to have been interested in secrecy particularly. Now, I do think, JJ, it is interesting that the stairs come down on the non-mountain side. This is, I agree, it seems to be an extension from the east, not from the west. This is not like an outpost of folks who are in the mountains, right, who are wanting to look out in that direction. This is an outpost of folks, I think, or an outpost or meeting place or whatever it was, of folks who were coming from the Bjorning lands there, off to the east, presumably. Maybe from north or south, but definitely from this bank of the river. But they also weren't making any attempt to hide it from that bank of the river. And that's, again, another reason why I don't think Bjorn would make this huge, ginormous path. He would have no need to. I don't know that he would have any desire to. A meeting place is one of the things that I'm thinking of.
A peaceful meeting, like a neutral location,
yes,
perhaps? Because it's not really part of any of the three major races' kingdoms.
Exactly. That's
and considering who's
one of my
parked
theories.
right here with us, the Eagles could oversee a mediation or be like the arbiters of very swift and painful justice if you act up.
Right. Exactly. You'd be a little exposed to Eagle counterattacks here. I do feel that I should go talk to the Eagle because I still haven't. There we go. Where's Lindleby?
That's in the Wells of Langflood, and chat, please don't tell him what's there. It is awesome. You just have to wait.
All right. I won't go there.
Unless you want to go visit.
No.
I do.
Is, in due time. In due time. In due time. Okay. Yeah. Now, Tomas, you're right. It could be used for a beacon, but there's no evidence of a beacon up here. Even evidence that like stuff was burnt. Now, again, if they had a fire up here 1,000 years ago, we wouldn't be able to tell now for sure. But yeah, I wouldn't think so because again, a beacon, the beacons work because it's a prearranged signal between two kingdoms, right? The beacons work because of the alliance between Rohan and Gondor. I don't think anybody was really kind of beacon worthy in this region, right? I mean, like, did anybody have a beaconish sort of relationship with anybody else in this region? I don't think so. So, yeah. It could be a lighthouse to make sure boats don't run into the Carrock, JJ. We can't rule that out, I suppose. That's that would be a very present concern, I think, to everyone. But
I think there's too much lichen on the rocks here for any sort of, at least, fire on the base of the rocky here.
Yeah. No, I don't think so. So I kind of like the idea of meeting place. Here's the other thing. So I was mentioning potential religious significance, that this could be a sacred space in some way. And do you know why I think that? Or rather, why that's one of the possible theories, is that we have a precedent for large freestanding tower of rock with well-worn steps leading up to the top where there's just an open space on top, and no buildings. And that's the Meneltarma in Numenor. Now, I'm not saying it's the Meneltarma. I'm not saying that the people who built it here in memory of the Meneltarma. I'm not saying that this was like a revival of the worship of Eru that was held on the Meneltarma. But I am wondering if there could possibly be a parallel to the Meneltarma. We've seen this happen in Tolkien's history all the time, right? That the same thing gets kind of sort of repeated over time.
Possibly, but
yeah.
The Meneltarma was the highest point in Numenor, if I recall correctly.
It was.
This is not the highest point
of course
in the
not.
local vicinity.
Of course not. But again, all I'm saying is this impulse to find a high place and to consider that high place, a sacred space, to like choose an isolated high place like this as a sacred space has precedent. That's really kind of all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
But okay, let's go to the Eyrie. We'll end there. We're late, but
don't forget to bow to the eagles or yeah.
Okay, here we are. Here's the Eagle's Eyrie. Because this is not very the terrain up here isn't very extensive, right?
And watch your step, please.
Because you can fall to your death fairly easily, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
and for those of us who have fear of heights, this is not a good place.
It's Gwai here. Wow, there he is. We've seen him in other places, but all right, I'm gonna bow to Gwai here.
There's actually a quest that has you bow to the various lords here.
Yeah, you gotta be polite. Oh, there's Gwai here, and Landreval, and Meneldor. Oh man, all the dignitaries are here. Okay, so if you were a hobbit and a bunch of dwarves, where would you roast meat on spits?
Out of the wind, one would think.
Yeah, I would think. I'm looking at this as a likely place right here. This is where I would set up my fire, right under here. But it doesn't look like they did. Not that I would necessarily expect to see remains of a campsite.
Not this many years later, no.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt the Eagles have, like, maintained the, little fire ring in memory of Gandalf and the dwarves. These trees are very interesting to me. These old dead trees. So where exactly are we located? Okay. Way up here. And I did see... I wasn't pretending not to see. I did see that broken down and sort of rebuilt bridge.
To the north, yep.
To the north along the river. I was trusting we were going to get to that. We'll get to that eventually. But I wanted to look out. It is awful steep here. So there's the river that comes down, and there's the Carrock way down there. And
so we're really up high.
Man, you can't even see the bridge from here. I can see the road that the bridge would be on. And there's Bjorn's house in the trees?
Yes, that circle.
Yeah. Okay. And the forest beyond that?
Arid Lasglen.
Right, no, and there's that bridge now down below us. Yeah. Looks like a dwarf bridge, but I won't be hasty.
And, oh, I didn't notice. You can see the white mirror from here.
The white mirror?
Mare, M-A-R-E, horse.
Oh, the white mare.
Yes. The developers took, I believe, inspiration from a real-life place in the UK where the previous inhabitants had used white rock to form the Celtic shape of a horse in the landscape that you can only really see if you're really high up. So and they put that into the game, and it of course ties into the Rohirric storyline.
Right. I don't see it.
Yeah, it's
Are we
not
too
showing
high
up
up?
very well. No, you're not too high up because I can see it from here. I think it's a graphics issue.
Ah, so I just posted the real... Trifle just posted the real life version.
Yes, the Uffington White Horse. Thank you,
Yeah.
Trifle.
Yeah, there it is.
But it's based on that. I'm just looking at your screen, and yeah, it's not manifesting on yours.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a graphic settings.
Yeah, I think I might have my graphic setting too low.
Which I almost have to, with some of the graphics going on in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll probably see it. So it's what? Like it's in that direction over here? Okay. All right. Well, presumably we'll see it later on. Okay, cool. Well...
I just posted the wiki page for it, and it has a picture of the in-game thing.
Cool.
No, Tomas, you don't have to be on an eagle to see it. When you see it in-game, it'll be evident.
Right. Yeah. Neat. Well, this is pretty cool and not very hospitable, which is just how I always pictured it. Because the eagles hang out here. I'm interested that the eagles don't have anything like nests. Or maybe this is just a part of their eyrie and their actual nests are elsewhere. Maybe this is like a little gathering place for them. Because of course...
Where they bring, hobbits and random
Exactly, because remember that when Bilbo and Dory end up, taken up by the first they're taken up into one place, and then they're transported across to where everyone's gathering. So that's probably what this is. So they were probably taken back to the nest the first time, and then this is the guest parlor, Tormarthen. That's exactly right. Okay, so yeah, what is over here? Is this a nest area up over behind here? Kind of looks nest-ish. I can't get in there. Yeah. Maybe. Yes. That looks like a great eagle nest, perhaps. Oh, there are bones in there. That's a skull and a pelvis of something large. Okay, sure.
Definitely a nest here, yeah.
Yeah, there's another bone over there. Okay, so so there is a nest over there. Not trying to pry, sir. It's a perfectly good nest. You can keep whoever skulls you want in there, I suppose.
As long as they're not mine.
Exactly. Cool. All right. Well, I should probably let people go. It's late. But we will resume next week. So next week we will we'll go back to we'll go out towards Bjorn's house, off in that direction. Yes, and then we will be more or less done with the Veils of Anduin. So we may finish the Veils of Anduin next week. Who knows?
Yeah, there isn't really much, and yeah, the Bjorning Host is the only other real bit of architecture in the entire area. I mean, there's a couple of places where there's like orcs and goblins and whatnot, but there's nothing we haven't already seen.
Right. Cool. Awesome. Neat. Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off here. Thanks everybody for joining us for discussion and field trip today. And I look forward to seeing you guys again next week. So have a good week, everybody. Don't forget, if you're interested in getting a free course in our Path program, send an email to path@signumu.org and let us know if you would be interested in our Powerful Presentations course or our Nuts and Bolts of Writing course. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you guys next week. Bye now.
Night.